Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya to all. On behalf of Dr. Ambedkar Caravan, it's my great honor to welcome our guest speaker for today as a part of our Prabuddha Bharat Revolution, Dr. Alka Dhoke. Dr. Alka is joining us from Mumbai, Maharashtra. Dr. Alka Dhoke is an MD in gynecology. She has worked as a senior lecturer in Government Medical College, Nagpur for over 10 years. She is currently the director and owner of Kamal Memorial Maternity Home for over 7 years now. Ma'am was also an associate professor in MNR Medical College and Hospital, Hyderabad. She was also the specialist at GB Pant Hospital, Port Blair, Andaman and Nicobar. Currently, ma'am is doing private practice in Worli, Mumbai. Ma'am is also very active in social and religious work since many years, and she is very supportive of all the atrocity cases. Presently, she is deeply involved in Dr. Payal Tadvi's case. So on behalf of Ambedkar Caravan, it's my great honor to welcome you, ma'am. You're an inspiration for all of us, and we're really looking forward to your today's lecture. Ma'am is going to tell us about Buddhism, a social and religious revolution. Over to you, ma'am and sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anuradha and Mr. Mangesh of Ambedkar Caravan for giving me opportunity to share my knowledge on Dhamma, the subject which is very much dear to me. Diva tapati adicho, rati abhati chandima, sannidho khatiyo tapati, jnai tapati brahmana, ata sabbam aurati, buddho tapati tejasa. The sun shines only in the day, and moon makes bright the night. The warrior shines when he is in his armor, and Brahmin when he is meditating. But the Buddha shines over all, by the day as well as by night, by his own glory. First of all, I pay my high respect to Samyak Sambuddha and Vishwaratna, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. On 14th October 1956, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar renounced Hinduism and embraced Buddhism, along with more than 5 lakhs followers at Diksha Bhumi, Nagpur. Buddhism is a combination of 3 jewels, Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. Buddha is first greatest scientist of world who discovered existence of mind in body, who discovered existence of suffering and path to remove suffering. He is first teacher who opened the door of knowledge, education to all, including women. Dhamma is discovery of man by man. It is noble teaching of Buddha. Sangha is holy order of monks who have renounced their worldly pleasures for spiritual development and spread of Dhamma for benefit of mankind. Sangha is open to all. There is no bar of caste, no bar of sex, no bar of status. It is like ocean and bhikkhus are like rivers. One day, that is on 14th October, Babasaheb prescribed 22 oaths along with Trisharan and Panchashil. First 8 oaths to remove Hindu sanskar from mind. Unless we do that, we will not be able to follow Dhamma sincerely. For example, if we want to write something on a slate, clean it first and then start writing on it. Or we can do painting beautifully on spotless, bright, white canvas paper. In other words, old must cease to before the new can begin to enliven and to pulsate. Remaining oaths are to consider all human beings equal to a step, to follow 8-fold path, 10 parmitas and Panchashil. That means to follow Prajna, Shil, Karuna. That is wisdom, morality, compassion. Finally, we have to take oath to renounce Hindu religion, which teaches inequality, injustice, inhumanity, and Buddhism. It is like bringing complete change in fundamental notions of life. It means complete change in values of life. It means complete change and attitude towards men and things. It means new life. What was Sahib? Next slide, please. Next slide. It was to bring social and religious revolution to establish based on liberty, equality, fraternity, and justice. Here I want to clear one important point first, that Baba Sahib always wanted social revolution to precede economical and political revolution. Why Baba Sahib wanted to establish ideal society based on above principles? Why he renounced Hindu religion? What is the ideal society of Hindu religion? These questions are more pertinent to those who are still in Hindu fold. Ideal society of Hindu religion was nothing but Chaturvarna created by Brahmins. This pattern of society was based upon certain rules. The first rule was that society should be divided into classes: Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Second rule was that there cannot be social equality among these four classes. They must be bound together by the rule of graded inequality. The Brahmins at the top, Kshatriya below the Brahmins, but above Vaishyas. The Vaishyas to be below the Kshatriyas, but above the Shudras, and the Shudras to be lowest of all. These four classes were not to be equal to one another in the matter of rights and privileges. The rule of graded inequality governed the question of rights and privileges, which he wished to claim. Shudra was not entitled to any right, much to have less any privilege. His privilege was to subsist, offending these three superior classes, without offending the three superior classes. The third rule of was related to the division of occupations. The occupation of Brahmin was learning and teaching, and the performance of religious observations. The occupation of Kshatriya was fighting. Trade was assigned to Vaishyas. The occupation of Shudras was service of the three superior classes. Occupations assigned to different classes were exclusive. One class could not trespass upon the occupation of the other. The fourth rule of Chaturvarna to the right to education. The pattern of Chaturvarna gave the right to education to the first three classes. The Shudras as well as all women, including those belonging to the class of Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, were denied to right to education. Such was the divine pattern of ideal society called Chaturvarna. The Brahmins had idealized the rule. They convinced society that these rules are ideal for them. In Hinduism, there is not ideal society of Chaturvarna, but also there is ideal religion. Slide, please. Theory of both is embedded in Vedas. Sunny, Aditya, slide, previous slide, religion. Yeah. Theory of both is embedded in Vedas. According to Brahmins, Vedas are not only sacred, but they are infallible and not. Their second thesis was about salvation of so-called soul. Salvation can be there only by due performance of sacrifices and observation of rites and ceremonies and offering of gifts to Brahmins. Buddha and Baba Sahib rejected this theory of tenets. Baba Sahib said, Vedas were worthless as desert. In their opinion, nothing was infallible. Nothing could be final. Everything must be open to examination and interpretation. Moreover, Chaturvarna system is based on division of society by caste. It is fixed order, never to be changed. Once a Brahmin, always a Brahmin. Once a Shudra, always a Shudra. Society was based on status conferred upon an individual by the accident of his birth. This system, those who are master remain masters, and those who are slaves remain slaves. Owners remain owners, and workers remain workers. Remain privileged, and the serfs remain serfs. This means there can be equality for few, but none for the majority. This means there can be liberty for some, for all, justice for few, and none for majority. Thus, friends, you must have observed that ideal society of Chaturvarna system is antagonistic ideal society based on liberty, equality, fraternity, and justice. That means it is antagonist to principles of Buddhism. That means it is antagonist to democracy. Equality cannot be established as long as there is trace of ill treatment and suppression of one class by another. Equality cannot be established until rights, privileges, education, occupation is open to all, one and all. Similarly, to establish fraternity, society should be mobile, should be full of channels for conveying a change taking place in one part to other parts. There should be many interests consciously shared. That means there must be social endosmosis. Next slide, please. No. Social endosmosis. Mere similarity in habits. No, you are going ahead. Adit. Previous. Yes, previous. Mere similarity in habits, customs, observing festivals of different groups, or living in physical proximity is not enough. How is it possible when one group or caste is living like a rat in his own hole, refusing to have contact with other? Fraternity is not possible when there is antisocial spirit, because one group has interests of its own. We shut it out from full interaction with, and there is always consciousness of its own group, own being. In fact, these are warring groups, each living for itself and for its selfish ideals, different standards also. Fraternity can only be established by associated living with attitude of respect and reverence towards fellow men. Now what we'll see about liberty. What is liberty? Law may guarantee various rights. What is the use of them if they are opposed by society? Merely because of virtue of birth of a man. If society doesn't allow to exercise various rights, then these rights have no meaning. Man has body as well as mind. He needs physical as well as mental freedom. Mere physical freedom is of no use. Freedom of mind is of prime importance. What is the use of freedom of a man whose mind is not free? According to Baba Sahib, a person whose mind is not free, though he is not in chains, is a slave. One whose mind is not free, though he is not in jail. Next slide, Aditya. One whose mind is not free, though he is alive, is dead. And is the proof of one's existence, but to whom you can call free man. Then Baba Sahib says further, I call him a free man who with conscious realizes his rights, responsibilities, and duties. He who is not a slave of circumstances and is always bent upon changing them in his favor, and one who is not a slave of usage, customs, and traditions, or of the teachings because they are brought down by the ancestors. One whose frame of reason is, I call him a free man. He who has not surrendered himself, who doesn't act on teaching of others blindly, who doesn't keep faith unless examined critically in the light of the cause and effect theory, who is always prepared to protect his rights, who is not afraid of racism, who has enough intellect and self-respect so as not to become a doll in the hands of others. I call such a man a free man. Free man, please, slides, Aditya, free man slide. He who doesn't lead his life under the direction of others, who carves out of life according to his own reason and decides himself as to how, in what way the life should be led. I call him free man. In short, who is master of his own life. Him alone I consider a free man. Such a beautiful definition Baba Sahib has made of free man. In present, I want to ask my dear Buddhist, Buddhist and non-Buddhist brothers and sisters of minority community. After so many years of independence, are we living life peacefully? Is there any equality with no ill treatment and suppression by other class? Is there any fraternity? Are the people from all communities behave with each other with respect? I think this question is more sophisticated. I ask, do they behave with each other like human beings? Is there any liberty? Do you fight for your rights and privileges? Do you have enough mental strength to fight against injustice committed upon you by upper class? Looking at the atrocities of severest sort, like that of Khairlanji, recent case of Manisha of Hathras, institution murders like Rohit Vemula and Dr. Payal Tadvi, caste working places and various other places, and many more instances. Who will say that we are enjoying democracy in the land of Buddha, Phule, Periyar, and Dr. Babasaheb? But question is, why not? What is the reason? And this is because we have no power. We are in minority, and that too unorganized, not compact, scattered through villages. Reason, the castes do not allow us to organize. Secondly, financially we are poor. We have no finances, no trade, no business, services for few. Poor people living in rural areas have no land, no shelter, no electricity, no food, no clothes, no water. Again, no finance to fight the case. Minority community tolerate insult, tyranny, and oppression at the hands of upper class without a sigh of complaint because they have no capacity to bear the expenses of the courts. And what about mental strength? Mental strength is still worse. Tolerance of insults and tyranny without and complaint has killed the sense of retort and revolt. Confidence, vigor, and ambition have completely vanished. Everywhere there is an atmosphere of defeatism. Even this slight idea that you can do something cannot creep into your minds. Casteism and religious belief have brought a very peculiar effect on the minds and morality of this country. Nobody feels pain at poverty and suffering. If at all anybody is moved, he doesn't try to eradicate it. People help only to those who belong to their caste or religion. Conditions are worst in villages. But how long will this go on? We can understand our ancestors' situation as they were denied right to knowledge. Thus, because of enforced ignorance, they continued they could not realize what had made their condition so degraded. They that Brahmanism had robbed them completely of the significance of their life. But now, because of facilities given by Dr. Babasaheb, we are educated, finally sound, intelligent enough to understand cunningness of Brahmins. So, responsibility on intellectual class of minority community. Dear brothers and brothers, feel for sufferings of women on whom atrocity, feel for the sufferings of the women whose body parts are cut, feel for suffering of the youth who are beheaded, feel for suffering of the poor helpless people of minority communities, of villages whose huts are burnt, who are boycotted. for vital needs of women. How long will remain? You will remain indifferent? Will you wake up when it happens with your daughter or son? Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, Doctor of Social Science, recognized our suffering, found out the cause of suffering and prescribed strong antidote for it. And what is that antidote? Renounce Hinduism and embrace Buddhism. Thank you very much. This was all about social revolution.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yeah.
There is an interesting question from the women in our audience. Maybe it is more relevant for the religious part, but I'll suggest it anyways. We can discuss it later also. So the question is, how can women be empowered with the help of Buddha's Dhamma?
Buddha's Dhamma, there is education for all. There is equality for all. There is no difference for the sex.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, that's great. And there's one more question. This is from our young people. Looking at the current context in our country, the current situation in our country, as a Buddhist thinker, what do you think should be the roadmap for a casteless society? How should we work towards a casteless society as the young people of this country?
So we should understand that the Hindu religion has caused so much of these atrocities and everything. It is not following the democracy. It is not. There is no equality. Hinduism, and why Baba Saheb embraced Buddhism? Because Baba Saheb knew that only in Buddhism these principles are constituted. So we must think changing the religion. The principles are established.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. That's a wonderful answer. Thank you so much. We can go ahead with the presentation, ma'am, with the religious revolution. Thank you.
Religious. Yeah. So after discussing social revolution, let us religious revolution. I am audible, no?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
No, okay. To gain the knowledge, Sahib wrote a beautiful grantha called Buddha and his Dhamma. Baba Sahib studied Buddhism not only for 21 years, but more than that. He was first student to pass 10th standard from our community, and to celebrate this success, function was held by our community people. On that occasion, Keluskar Guruji gifted him a book, Buddha Charitra. Baba Sahib read that book. Since then, he developed affinity towards Buddha. Baba Sahib read Tripitaka also. Buddha and his Dhamma Grantha, not only basic Buddhism, so scientific Buddhism. It covers social, religious, economical, cultural, and political aspects of life. It teaches how husband should behave with wife and vice versa. There is Vinaya for wealthy, Vinaya for householder, girls, pupils, masters, and servant. Hence, it is duty of all Buddhists to read this book and practice Dhamma in day-to-day life. All when disciples used to listen his discourse, after knowing the truth, they used to express their feelings as beautiful Lord, beautiful. Should set up again that which had been overthrown or reveal that which had been hidden. or should disclose the road to one that was astray, or should carry a darkness. They that have eyes will see. Next slide, please. Aditya. New light. Next slide. In search of new light, Siddhartha Gautama first practiced austerities and self-mortification, which were initially he had one meal a day, then every 7 days, once fortnightly. In later years, a single grain of rice a day. Dirt and in his body for years till it dropped off by itself. In chill wintry nights, he dwelt in open air. In broiling month of summer, he dwelt under baking sun. He lay down in a charnel ground with charred bones for pillow. At the end of 6 years, his body became extremely emaciated. If he sought to fill his belly, it was his backbone, which he found in his grasp. If he sought to fill his backbone, he found himself grasping his belly. Still, he found no new light. He reflected to himself, this is not the way to perfect knowledge, nor to liberation. After that, he ate food and brought by Sujata in a golden bowl. Next slide, please. Aditya.
So there is a lag. So we are on religious revolution slide. You can continue.
No, religious revolution. Please bring those slides.
Ma'am, we can see that religious revolution on the page. You can continue your talk, ma'am.
Yes, yeah, no problem. It took Gautama 4 weeks of meditation to obtain enlightenment. Dispelled. Light arose, ignorance dispelled, and knowledge arose. Before enlightenment, Gautama was only Bodhisattva. After enlightenment, Buddha. Who is Bodhisattva? Bodhisattva is a person who is seeking to be a Buddha. After enlightenment, doubt arose in mind of Buddha. Go forth and preach his doctrine, or should he continue to devote himself to his own perfection? It is too difficult for mankind to accept it and follow it. It is too difficult for common man to liberate itself from entanglement of God and soul. It is hard for mankind to give up its belief and ceremonies. Mankind is intent on its selfishness and takes delight and pleasure in it. Finally, he realized that he left the world because there was so much of conflict resulting in misery and unhappiness, and for which he knew no remedy. If he can banish misery and unhappiness from the world by the propagation of his doctrine, it was his duty to return to the world and serve it, and not to sit silent, as it is personification of inactivity and impassivity. And Buddha decided to preach his doctrine to the world. Buddha preached his first sermon to 5 Parivrajakas at Sarnath. Let us understand the new path, that is Dhamma, which Buddha discovered. There are 2 extremes of life. Life of pleasure, eat, drink, for tomorrow we die. Another is life of mortification, kill all desires, because they bring rebirth. Rebirth means repetition of same feeling. Buddha's Dhamma is middle path, Madhyam Marga, Majjhima Patipada, which is neither the path of pleasure nor the path of self-mortification. To keep body in good health is a duty, otherwise you shall not be able to keep your mind strong and clear and have the lamp of wisdom burning. Buddha's Dhamma has nothing to do with God and soul, nothing to do with life after death, nor it has any concern with rituals and ceremonies. The center of Dhamma is man and relation of man to man in his life on earth. Secondly, man is living in sorrow, in misery and poverty. The world is full of suffering, and that how to remove suffering from the world is the only purpose of Dhamma. Then how to remove suffering? Buddha teaches, if every person followed path of purity, path of righteousness, path of virtue, it would bring about end to all sufferings. What is the path of purity? Path of purity is nothing which is foundation of good in the world. How can a man be instrument of good if he has no personal purity in him? A person who wishes to be good must follow. Every man must have a standard by which to judge whatever he does, and Panchashil constitute the standard of life because its principles are good for individual as well as for society. There are everywhere people who are patit, but there are two classes of the patit. Patit means fallen. The patit who has standard and a patit who has no standard. The patit who has no standard doesn't know that he has fallen. Consequently, he remains fallen. On the other hand, a patit who has a standard tries to rise from his fallen state. Why? Because he knows that he has fallen. Means person should know that he is doing something wrong. He must realize this. Then only he can rise above that. Thus, Panchashil is recognized as standard of life for regulating a man's life. There is great importance of Panchashil in man's life. Individual in his family, society, country and world can lead a happy and peaceful life if they follow Panchashil sincerely. But you see, in practically, Panchashil has become a matter of discussion only, whether to eat non-veg or not. Buddha never told us to leave eating non-veg, whether to take a little drink because they have a lot of suffering. They give this reason. Because they have suffering, they take little drinks. So instead of considering Panchashil as a standard of life, those who don't eat non-veg or don't take drinks, in fact, means if they don't follow Panchashil, then those people are considered of low standard. My husband and me don't take this. My husband doesn't take drinks. So in party, he is low standard. Path of righteousness. Arya Ashtanga Marga or Majjhima Patipada or middle path. That is Prajna, Shil, Samadhi. There are 8 constituents of Arya Ashtanga Marga. First one is Samadhi, right view or right understanding is noblest of 8-fold path. Right thinking is key to remove avijja. Avijja means ignorance, and ignorance means failure to understand 4 noble truths. And what 4 noble truths are? There is suffering, there is cause for suffering, there is way to remove suffering by following 8-fold path. Lack of understanding is root of all evil. But how to develop right view? By recognizing the law of cause and effect. That is Pratitya Samutpad or law of dependent origination. If a man has perverted or evil view, then his thoughts, his activities and works will be perverted. Samadhi requires free mind and free thought. Saranta Sarato, Atha Saranta Sarato, Te Saran Adhigachanti, Samma Sankalpa Gochara. A person who has right view, he only understands what is truth and what is untruth. Now we will see what is Samma Sankappo. It means right to resolve. Slide. Every man must have noble and praiseworthy aims and aspirations, and he must have firm determination to accomplish them. This is right resolve. Then third element of eightfold path is Samma Vaka or right speech. It teaches that one should speak only true. One should not speak false. One should not speak evil of others. That one should refrain from slander. One should not use angry and abusive language towards any fellow man. One should speak kindly and courteously to all. One should not indulge in pointless, foolish talk, but his speech should be sensible and to the purpose. Then, Samma Kamanto teaches right behavior. It teaches that every action should be founded on respect for feelings and rights of others. These are very important. Eightfold Path is very important. Then his fifth is Samma Ajivo. Every individual has to earn his livelihood. But there are ways of earning one's livelihood. Some are bad and some are good. Bad ways are those which cause injury or injustice to others, and good ways are those by which the individual earns his livelihood without causing injury or injustice to others. Samma Vyayamam, right endeavor or right efforts. It is primary effort to remove avijja. Every person has some good qualities in him and some bad qualities also. He should always strive to increase good qualities and should strive to remove bad qualities. This is primary effort. Then Sammasati is mindfulness and thoughtfulness. It means constant wakefulness of the mind. Watch and ward over the evil passions by the mind. You must be aware of whatever activity you are doing. Walking, while standing, while speaking, every act you must be aware. That is mindfulness, Sammasati. Then last is Samma Samadhi. There are 5 fetters or obstacles which come in the way of a person trying to achieve Eightfold Path. These 5 fetters are covetousness. Covetousness means excessive desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, that is laziness, lethargy, doubt and indecision. These are the 5 fetters. If one wants to on the path of Eightfold, it is necessary, therefore, to overcome these hindrances, and the means to overcome them is through Samadhi. But there is difference between Samadhi and Samma Samadhi. Samadhi is mere concentration. For example, if you are chanting any prayer, at that time these fetters are temporarily suspended because these jnana states are temporary. There is no training to the mind for concentration. In that way, it is negative. Means in Samadhi, there is no concentration for mind, to the mind. It is temporary state. Means if you are chanting or those people chant mantras and all, these states are temporary. And at that moment, the 5 fetters are left aside, but it is not a right concentration. So in our in Eightfold Path, there is Samma Samadhi. Samma Samadhi is positive. It trains the mind to concentrate and to think of some kushal kamma, good deeds and thoughts during concentration. Samma Samadhi gives mind the necessary motive power to do good, to understand that Samma Samadhi is nothing. It is vipassana only. By this technique only, Buddha studied his own body with intense concentration and discovered the truth. Means Samma Samadhi is nothing but vipassana. We have to do anapanasati and followed by seeing the body, observing the with concentration. Then the path of virtue. There are 10 virtues or paramitas, states of that, those are called states of perfection. First is Dan, Shil, Upekha, Nishkama Virya, Shanti, Satya, Adhishtan, and Karuna Maitri. Dan means giving of one's possession without expecting in return. Shila is moral temperament. The disposition not to do evil and disposition to do good. To be ashamed of doing wrong. Shila means fear of doing wrong. Upeka is detachment, but it is different from indifference. It is state of mind where there is neither like nor dislike, remaining unmoved by the result and yet engaged in the pursuit of it. Means if we do some work, then if we cannot accomplish it properly, if we fail in doing that, then we become nervous. But it states that we should not become nervous and keep on moving the same effort, putting same effort in that work, which you have to reach your goal. Nekama is renunciation of pleasures of world. Then virya is right endeavor. It is doing with all your might whatever you have undertaken to do with never a thought of turning back, whatever you have undertaken to do. Shanti is forbearance. Not to meet hatred by hatred is the essence of it. For hatred is not appeased by hatred, it is appeased only by forbearance. Sakka, in Pali, Sakka means truth. A person must never tell a lie. His speech must be truth and nothing but the truth. Adhisthana is resolute determination to reach the goal. Karuna is loving kindness to human beings. And Maitri is extending fellow feeling to all beings, not only to a friend, but to enemy also, not only to man, but to all living beings. This is the difference between Karuna and Maitri. Karuna is loving kindness to human beings, and Maitri is loving kindness to all living beings in the world. Great. These virtues one must practice to his utmost capacity. However, this must be accomplished with prajna or intelligence. Means whatever virtues, 10 paramitas I told, those paramitas should be accompanied with prajna or intelligence. Understood now? Because while giving, for example, I will tell, while giving dan or money to drunkard, one must use his intelligence. For what for he will use it? Otherwise, he will use it for again to take the drinks. There must be karuna, but without prajna or wisdom, karuna may end in supporting evil. Likewise, every virtue must be accompanied with prajna or wisdom or intelligence. So there must be knowledge and consciousness of what wrong conduct is and how it arises. Similarly, there must also be knowledge and consciousness of what right conduct is and how it arises. Without such knowledge, there cannot be real goodness, though the act may be good. That is why prajna or wisdom is necessary virtue. For example, child does all good things innocently. But can we say that he is using his prajna intelligence, or does he have enough wisdom? No. This is all about Eightfold Path and 10 paramitas. Never in the history of the world has any founder of religion taught that the recognition of human suffering was the real basis of religion, and removal of suffering is the real purpose of it. Thus, Buddha was a reformer, full of the earnest moral purpose and trained in all intellectual cultures of his time. Although he had knowledge of opposing views, still he put forth his doctrine for the welfare of mankind. To summarize, Panchashila, Eightfold Path and 10 paramitas. How can a man be instrument of good if he has no personal purity in him? Why do men not mind enslaving or dominating others? It is because men are not righteous in their conduct towards one another. If Eightfold Path is followed by everyone, then all injustice and inhumanity that man does to man can be removed. Is not dana necessary to remove suffering of needy and poor? Is not karuna necessary to help the poor and needy? Thus, if every person follows Dhamma, then only then individual or as well as society can be happy. Now, I will give special attention to basic theories in Buddhism, which are always subject to debate. First, basic theory, Nam and Rupa. The theory against existence of soul or Atma. According to Buddha's analysis, a sentient being is compound thing. Sentient being here means all living creatures, not only man. So a sentient being is compound thing consisting of certain physical elements and certain mental elements, and they are called khandhas. Then these are physical and mental elements. Physical elements are called rupa or matter. And what are those elements? Physical elements: earth, water, fire, and air. Body is made of billions of cells or subatomic particles. In a fraction of seconds, millions of cells arise and pass. Being is becoming. There is nothing to hold. No self, no I. What to learn from this? Impermanence or anityata. Means nothing is permanent. Everything is changing. So this theory also teaches that there should be no attachment for each and everything. So impermanence and no attachment. Now, consciousness, we will see about consciousness or mental elements. Now or it is also called Vinana or consciousness, mental elements, all are same. And these mental elements are all also composed of earth, water, fire, and air. So there should not be any confusion, because people have a lot of doubts about it. And there are 4 mental processes. Means in day-to-day life, I'm saying we have to go through all these mental processes. From fraction of second, our mind changes. That is the process I'm telling you. First, my mental process is Vedana, sensation springing from contact of senses with the world. 6 senses with the world. 5 senses means eyes, nose, ear, tongue, and touch. And 6 is mind. Then the second mental process is Sanna. Sanna means perception, means labeling. First was Vedana or sensation. Second is Sanna or perception. Third is Sankhara, states of mind. And final is Vijnan or final you can say final mental reaction or Sitta Sika. Sitta or Chetna is mainspring. Did you understand? Means if you Vedana means if you see I see any something, then sensation occur in your body. Then your mind recognizes, no, that person, that object or sight is person. Then according to Sankara means states of mind. It depends on the what is your state of mind at that time. If you like that person, then you will have pleasurable feeling. If you don't like, you will have unpleasurable feeling. So final reaction will be according to that. Means that will be the final reaction. You will act, you will speak according to that. So that is the final reaction. That is called Sitta Sika. I hope you understood. We were talking about consciousness. This is different. The mental processes I told, those are different. Now I am talking about consciousness. Consciousness is the result of combination of 4 elements: Prithvi, Aap, Tej, Vayu. But question is always asked, how is consciousness produced? Mere coexistence of aggregation of physical elements do not produce consciousness. But according to Buddha, wherever there is rupa or kaya, there is consciousness accompanying it. To give example from science, Where there is electric field, it is always accompanied by a magnetic field. No one knows how the magnetic field is created or how it arises, but it always exists along with electric field. Same relation is said to exist between body and consciousness. The magnetic field is in relation to the electric field is called an induced field. Consciousness is an induced field in relation to rupa or kaya or matter. Means where there is matter, there is consciousness, conscious matter. I can give a simple example as the I am gynecologist. Example of a single cell activity. At the time of conception, single mature cell called mature ovum is fertilized by single male cell sperm. This mature ovum is beautifully picked up by fimbria, fallopian tube, and then this mature ovum travel along with the fallopian tube, and from outside this sperm, single cell sperm is coming, and in the fallopian tube there is fertilization. See, the single cell activity we are seeing here. The cell picked up by fimbria do not go in any opposite direction. It has to go in the direction of uterus, and this single cell is acting according to how it is acting. So it is because of the subjective awareness it has. It is called subjective consciousness. Means each cell has subjective consciousness. In consciousness which exists, consciousness are three types of. This was a single cell activity I told you. Now we are shifting to consciousness. Consciousness are three types of three types: cognitive, emotional, and volitional. Consciousness is cognitive when it gives knowledge and information. Emotional when it exists in certain subjective states characterized by either pleasurable or painful tones. When emotional consciousness produces feeling. Volitional, this type of consciousness makes a being exert himself for the attainment of some end. It gives rise to what we call will or activity. Thus, all the functions of a sentient being are performed by the sentient being through and as a result of consciousness. Means we work according to the command of mind or consciousness. So, what are the functions which are left to be performed by soul? All functions assigned to the soul are performed by consciousness. A soul without any function is absurdity. I am telling you the difference. In Hinduism, they consider soul and everything is done by the soul. But in Buddhism, this theory is rejected. Belief in soul is unprofitable. It only ends in creating superstition. Belief in existence of soul is as common as belief in the existence of God. It to believe in soul. Buddha said, religion based on soul is based on speculation. It is a part of Brahminic religion. They call it Atma. They believe that soul doesn't die with body. It takes birth in another body when it comes into being. This is all absurdity. Means we in Buddhism, we don't consider soul. All the activities just now I told you are done by consciousness, mind or Vijnana. Now we will move to theory of dependent origination, forward and backward. This theory is basic of Buddhism. It is also called theory of cause and effect or Pratitya Samutpan. This happened because of this cause. Everything originates from some previous existing cause. One is dependent on another. Cause and effect. So look at this. On ignorance depend intellectual differentiation. Means intellectual differentiation means same thing one can explain in various ways according to their views. This is called intellectual differentiation. Why this intellectual differentiation occurs? Because of ignorance. And then on intellectual differentiation depends consciousness. Consciousness, just we have seen. Consciousness means mind, final mental reaction. Just now I explained you. On consciousness depend name and form. On name and form depend the 6 sense organs. I told you 5 senses and 6 is mind. On the 6 organs of sense depends contact. Contact with the surroundings. Contact with the sense organ with the surrounding. On contact depends sensation. On sensation depends desire. On desire depends attachment. On attachment depends existence. On existence depends birth. Here I want to tell you that birth is not actually birth. It is the repetition of the same feelings, same thoughts, repetition of the same thoughts. Understood, no? It is not actual birth. On attachment depends existence. You have seen on desire depends attachment. If you have greed and if you don't have control over it, then same feeling occurs in next moment. So this is birth of same thoughts. This is what it means. On birth depend on old age, death, sorrow, lamentation, misery, grief, and despair. Does this entire aggregation of misery arise? But also on the complete fading out and cessation of ignorance, sees all intellectual differentiation. Means we are going backward now. If ignorance is removed, then all intellectual differentiation are removed. On the cessation of intellectual differentiation, consciousness is ceased. On the cessation of consciousness, cease name and form. On the cessation of 6 organs and sense ceases to contact. Means 6 organs will not have contact with the surroundings. On the cessation of contact, ceases sensation. Thus, ignorance is the cause of all suffering. How it is to be removed and how this ignorance is removed? This is the important question. It is removed by a right view or right understanding. That is by prajna or wisdom. To understand this, you have to go and see what I told you. I told you mental whole processes. That is only. Vedana means sensation. Sanya means perception. Vedana means something. If we see hear something sound, then sensation occur. Then perception is you understand that no, it is a sound. Then sankhara means if you like that sound, then you will have pleasurable feeling. And then final reaction will be you will react according to that. Means that will be consciousness. That is what it is mentioned in dependent origination. We are just now talked. Then second important point of debate is rebirth in Buddhism. As already we have seen, sentient being is composed of Nam and Rupa. Means physical elements and mental elements. Prithvi, Aap, Tej, Vayu. Earth, water, fire and air. After death, physical elements die, but mental elements, consciousness or energy is released in space. These above 4 elements join the mass of similar elements floating in space. Means element of earth will join mass of earth element. Element of water joins mass of water element, etc. When the 4 elements from this floating mass join together, then a new birth takes place. The elements need not and are not necessarily the same body which is dead. They may be drawn from different bodies. Thus, body dies, but elements are ever living. Body dies means it ceases to produce heat. This is second concept I am telling you. Body dies means it ceases to produce heat. or energy. Thus, as we have seen above, energy escape from body joins general mass of energy playing about in universe. Thus, there are twofold aspects of theory of rebirth in Buddhism: rebirth of element and regeneration of matter. Rebirth of elements means we have seen that consciousness is released after death. Physical part dies, and these elements, Prithvi, Aap, Tej, Vayu, are released in space, and they join the same mass, which is in space. There is no Akash. There is no the space which we feel empty. It is not empty. It is filled with conscious field infinity. Buddha believed in regeneration of matter and not in rebirth of soul. Means regeneration means whatever energy is released after death of a person, the energy is goes again to the space. That is what Buddha says, that it is regeneration of matter, and not thus it views is thus Buddha's view is in consonance with science. Energy neither created nor destroyed. It is never lost. That is what science says. Conclusion: rebirth theory of Buddha is totally opposite to rebirth of soul in Hinduism. There is no Akash. Space is filled with energy, which is called conscious field infinite. Modern science is echo of Buddhism. Greatest scientists Leo Tolstoy, Herbert Wells, Albert Einstein say that Buddhism is only religion based on science, uses intelligence. There is no place for God, no superstition, no supernaturalism. Einstein says he could postulate theory of relativity. E is equal to mc square. E is energy, m is matter of mass, and c is velocity of light, which is 3 lakhs kilometer per second. From Buddha's theory, Einstein says he could postulate theory of relativity from Buddha's theory of cause and effect. And if he wanted to accept any religion, he would accept Buddhism. Hence, Dr. Babasaheb says that modern science is echo of Buddhism. Concluding verse. I will conclude my lecture by remembering Buddha's message. Be self-illuminating like a lamp. Don't be dependent for light like earth. Don't be satellite. Be a light unto thyself. Believe in self. Don't be dependent on others. Be truthful. Always take refuge in the truth and do not surrender to anybody. Babasaheb erected strong pillar of Buddhism. No one should eradicate it. Rise like a phoenix bird, who obtains new life by arising from ashes. So we can, after devastation and loss. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Anuradha, Mangesh, and Aditya. Jai Bhim.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It was a very, very in-depth lecture with a lot of information, and I'm sure our viewers are deeply appreciative of it. There is a question which has come for the religious part of Buddhism. What is your definition, or what is your opinion about Nibbana?
Nibbana is this removal of all the passions from mind. There are no passions: greed, anger, ignorance. Nibbana means to achieve Nibbana, we have to remove mukti, means removal of passions. It is nothing but Nibbana.
Okay, that's great. That's great. And there is one, I would say, more of a practical question that has come. That people have Buddha statues in their houses. but do you feel that they follow the path? And what would be your advice to our people?
See, everyone must follow Dhamma for benefit of him and benefit of family and benefit of society. It is up to him. He must know that the Buddha's Dhamma is beneficial to him. Purity of mind, that Panchashil is beneficial for him only. If he doesn't follow Panchashil, then who will be affected? He and his family will be affected. If he doesn't follow Eightfold Path, then who will be affected? He himself and society. If 10 paramitas are not followed, then who will be affected? Dhamma is for man, and it is for behavior of man to other man. It is relation of one behavior of man to other man, and it is Dhamma is morality, and morality one must follow. Baba Sahib throughout his life gave importance to morality. He did not say that educate and earn money and do everything whatever you like. What for he gave us Dhamma? We must understand the importance of Dhamma.
Yes, ma'am. Wonderful. Yes, that is wonderful advice. And like Buddha has said, Atta Deepa Bhava, be your own light. So
Yeah.
that is a wonderful message that you have given to us, ma'am. So, ma'am, on behalf of the viewers, may I request you to take a few minutes and just quickly summarize the social aspects of the revolution of Buddha and the religious aspects of the revolution of Buddha. Just a quick summary for all of us.
So social Baba Sahib view was to establish ideal society based on liberty, equality, fraternity, and justice. Without that, because of the division of caste in society, we are unorganized. Not a single platform under which we can organize, we can agitate. We don't have equality. There is no fraternity. Each one fights with one another, and in each person's mind there is caste consciousness always. So and caste consciousness and caste discrimination we are seeing in the society. How much it is harmful to the society. And the religion, which Hindu religion teaches that it is good. They don't consider that all cruelty they are doing. It is, they teach that it is told in their religion. It is not like this in Buddhism. Buddhism gives first and foremost importance to morality. And Dhamma is nothing but morality. So we must understand all the sufferings of the mind are because of this caste system. So Baba Sahib did not want for the, after that to reform the Hindu religion because he faced up to 1935 Mahad Satyagraha, then this temple, Kalam Mandir temple Satyagraha. All it means to reform the Hindu religion. When he realized that nothing can be changed in this religion, all efforts are in vain. Then he studied all religions, and all in all religions he found that Buddhism is the only religion in which these liberty, equality, fraternity, and justice. It is based for cultivation of mind, and thus Baba Sahib has in all these all these principles in our constitution also. So Buddhism is not is a way of life, and it is to the personal as well as to remove sufferings. So Buddhism should be observed in that way, and not any other religion in other religions, like they do just prayers, rites, and ceremonies, and believe in God, and under they mean like animals, nothing less than animals. In and feel is taught in their religion, and they feel it is sacred, and Brahmins have told them that this is sacred and this is permanent and no one should question it. So Baba Sahib and Buddha rejected all these theories. They said that everything is for re-examination, reconsideration. Nothing is permanent. Everything is changeable. So that is the explanation. Hello.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello.
Thank you very much for the summary, and thank you very much for today's talk on Buddhism, social and religious revolution. We are deeply thankful to you, and we are deeply thankful to Aditya sir also for helping us in making sure that everything goes smoothly. And on behalf of Ambedkar Caravan, I'm deeply grateful to you for coming on our forum and enlightening us and all our viewers with your knowledge. And we hope to continue to have you come on our platform and share more of your knowledge with us. Thank you once again. Thank you, Aditya sir. Thank you, Dr. Alka. Jai Bhim. Namo Buddhaya.
Thank you. Namo Buddhaya.